Good afternoon and evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is James here, the Heroes Peak podcast. Quick peek, as usual, for the WandaVision, latest installment episode of WandaVision. And with me, I have homegrown talent here, Serena. How are you doing today, Serena?
I am great.
Cool. Can tell from your face. Pretty good, pretty good. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. It was me all along.
It was you all along. Well, you're doing. Both of you guys are doing better than Sparky, so that's a plus.
True. Poor Sparky.
Oh man.
2021.
So let's get right into this, the latest episode. I know we haven't done these in a minute, but
Yeah.
no better time to start than episode 8, which is the
Right.
penultimate episode of the entire series. So in this episode, it seems like it's going to follow up with what's happening in that creepy basement of Agatha Harkness. And what exactly does that mean for our favorite character in the show, mine at least, Wanda, and her missing twins?
Yep.
So that's a pretty much a synopsis. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, I like. First
opening
off, I
trailer.
like that. Yeah,
Go ahead. I was going to say the opening trailer. Go ahead, Mike.
that we got her origin story for Agatha. That was cool. It was well done too. I thought with all the witches around and her mom. So
What I think they did pretty well was they introduce witchcraft and magic in a form that makes sense. Unlike in the comics, if you looked at the comics, Salem witchcraft, all that stuff, the old white lady and the brooch and the witch garment. This version seemed a little better. It seemed darker, but it's still within Disney Plus and MCU. It wasn't too dark. I got a lot of Sabrina the Teenage Witch vibes as well.
Yeah.
What about you, Serena?
Yeah, I like the way they formatted it in the beginning because at first it looked like a regular, like burning a witch at the stake. Like those were other people who found out, but then they turned it and they like took their hoods off. Basically, they were witches too. So obviously something had gone wrong. So
That's
I really
what I
like
thought,
how
too.
they did that.
Gotcha. The one thing that I noticed is now that we have introduced magic officially, I mean, we know Doctor Strange was the first pioneer of magic in the MCU universe, but I think this form of magic seems different. Whereas Doctor Strange, if you watch the movie, tells you he's using energy from the cosmos, astral projections, and if you looked at the arcane movement of his hands and like the geometry, whereas with Agatha and Wanda to another extent, it's more like this ether, this flow of colored energy that's coming out, and something more traditional to what we've seen in your standard witchcraft TV movie.
Yeah, so this version to me seems like MCU's introduction to mutants. Like this was a born power, as opposed to Doctor Strange who learned his power, right?
Right.
So as we go through the episode, which I really enjoyed, Vision and Wanda getting more backstory.
Let's get into that because I don't want to waste too much time on the intro. We get it.
Yeah.
Agatha's backstory is revealed. Although late in the game, it makes sense in the timing of the show because the reveal was episode 7.
Yeah.
But the show actually does much better justice to Wanda and Vision by kind of giving us their backstory as well as a couple, but more so her personal backstory that we did not see much of, and her introduction in the MCU through Age of Ultron. Well, I guess
we actually get to see the full scene with the family, and it was touching. It was really like it hits you. So
I thought that was beautifully done. I think what started this whole backstory was Agatha herself trying to get a better understanding of how Wanda's able to create this. So it's kind of, it's made right there on the plate saying that she's not, Agatha herself isn't creating this hex. So Serena, when you started seeing how Agatha was kind of manipulating Wanda to get some more backstory, what was going through your head as she was taking us, the viewers, and Agatha through her life's backstory?
I mean, I think interesting to see because we know that Wanda can get into other people's minds. So obviously Agatha had to try and do the same thing and sort of recreate each scene. And like you see at one point where like Wanda's being called by her parents and Agatha's like, go, go, as if like she's in her own life again, almost re-experiencing this. So I think that was really well done.
it was interesting though that Agatha had to use her hair
Mm-hmm.
enchant her hair in order to do that, whereas Wanda can just do it naturally.
Yeah, I did peep that. I also peeped the fact that Agatha, first of all, shout outs to the stagecraft and the cinematography of the basement. So as we're seeing Wanda's backstory on her life, it's revealed to us that the impact of well, the whole idea of her creating these TV based sitcom shows throughout to help cultivate with her grief and deal with vision all stems from her childhood love of, guess what, sitcom TV. So apparently, if she was into cartoons, 80s cartoons, we would be having a whole different show. It'd be Thundercats, He-Man. But
Yeah.
no, it was family sitcoms, to be very specific. Family sitcoms. So Mike, what were your thoughts as you're sitting there and understanding the fact that, okay, the reason why she chose this format and the hex stemmed from her childhood, which wasn't revealed until this episode?
Yeah, so I thought that was a great reveal because he opened up the case, and basically every show we went through this series, he had a DVD box set.
What about you, Rena?
I think you could really tell that the shows were deeply ingrained in her mind, just because like even as a child they showed like she knew every episode, she knew exactly what was going to happen every single one, and obviously that like in the situation they were living in, Cold War-esque as Agatha would say,
Yeah.
it was the only way to escape from this. And then I honestly, for me, I would say that I there's like a sort of like a further understanding of it when you think about how like they sat there for 2 days following the bombing, and the TV show just continued to play. So I would think that she'd be scarred from that experience and would want to steer away from the sitcoms, but I guess that was the only thing that she used to get her through.
You know what I thought when I watched that? Because Serena's point about leaving an imprint on their lives and their psyche for the rest of their lives. Because remember, Pietro was also there.
Yep.
Pietro's catchphrase in Ultron, you didn't see that coming? To me, felt like it was from a TV show.
Yeah.
Not so much, to the germane to the situation they were having on the island on Sokovia, but more so like a TV quip that he was doing, someone's catchphrase that he kept repeating. Did I do that or something similar? So that crossed through my mind. And then they end that segment of her backstory with a little teaser of her reaching out to the Stark Industries bomb and possibly being able to chaos magic or hex, spoiler.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a little dancing around between mutant versus magic or inherent magic powers. So at this moment, Agatha pulls out Wanda from this dream backstory sequence, and then guess like us, the audience, was like, okay, so you were like a baby witch, you kind of had powers, but what gave you the big guns? And we see her we see only her. We don't see Pietro. We see her in a test lab experiment of some sort, and she's looking like really like she was like an insane asylum for like 2 months or so, right? So now we get to see her go through this lab experiment, and they're doing this test case with her. They announced that no one else survived, right? And we know this. So the Mind Stone is in this test lab, and rather than her call to it, it calls to her, right? The Mind Stone comes out and its shield, the blue shield from the scepter, and then it goes in and it faces her, and then it reveals itself, right? We've seen this sort of cinematography with Vision. Now it reveals itself to her, and there's a very interesting situation that happens here. That I was kind of stuck on this for a little bit. I'm not sure what we saw, but let's start with Mike. Mike, this sequence with her and the Mind Stone, kind of like communing, reaching out, Mind Stone reaching out to her first, and then some visions are happening, no pun intended, and then boom, we cut that segment.
The most interesting part was when they were trying to watch the video after, and they couldn't tell what happened. Like they couldn't see it, only she saw it.
So Agatha, who's doing great, by the way, because she's basically us, the audience. She's segueing in between of these backstories. She goes, okay, so you got close to Infinity Stone and enhanced your powers. But how did he create all of this? I don't get it.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty good a conversation between the two of them about her feeling lonely. And remember, she had this conversation with Pietro. When Pietro, the character Pietro that we know him to be, was trying to ask her how did she create all this stuff, and she was like, all she remembers are her feeling deep loneliness. After Vision was gone. So she gets to that conversation, and then they take us to the next segment of this is the Vision and Wanda at Avengers HQ from the Ultron, I guess, time period. And I thought that this was a very touching scene. And I'm not one to like use a lot of hyperboles, but I think this moment between Vision and Wanda, to me, kind of put some gravitas to their relationship that I didn't buy in Infinity War.
Exactly right.
I didn't see much of it in that movie at all, and I thought this conversation, greatly written, by the way, because you could take what they're talking about in just general in life, the loss of a loved one, grief. Because she was talking about her brother, who I used to joke all the time, like she doesn't care about Pietro. Like we never hear about this guy since the end of Ultron. She moved on, right? This is her twin brother that she survived a moment in time with the bomb and everything. Like you would think that they're closer than that. And I didn't see that, but I saw it at that moment when Vision was talking to her about how to deal with grief. At the same time, kind of like catalyzing their relationship to me more than I've ever imagined in the MCU. So let's start with Rena. Again, I know we watched this together. What was going through your head as you were watching this moment in this scene that was beautifully written and greatly acted?
I honestly like that it was included, because really they could have gone without it and we would have not even noticed or like wanted it. But I like that they included it just to try and add Vision in and add more of their relationship in, just to give some context as to like her grief, especially for Agatha, who obviously doesn't understand that because she has to go back and replay all her memories. So she needed to understand why she held such strong emotional connection to Vision.
So, sentient AI, which we'll get into in the next portion. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, so I thought it was a key scene because a lot of people don't seem to understand why Wanda and Vision are together, right? Besides the connection with the Mind Stone, this scene kind of shows, after the tragedy, what brought them together. So, and him trying to be basically more human, and her, connecting with that. So I thought it was
a great point. I totally forgot about that, because you see in this moment, again, you don't see this much in Ultron or Infinity War, his sense of trying to find out his place in this universe.
Right.
Like, where does he belong? Like, what these mannerisms? Like, he's watching the show along with her, which used to be her and her brother's thing, and he's finding what's hilarious, what's not hilarious. Is he really injured? The Dick Van Dyke section, whatever. I thought that was very well. Again, not to be hyperbolic about this, but I thought that was very good. This is the first time in an MCU movie since a while I felt like this scene was written with the effect that it landed, the emotional content, which I really liked. Then it takes us to the next segment, the next flashback, which this one is more the modern time after the blip, as we learned from Spider-Man Far From Home. And we got a different version of events to how exactly she was able to recover Vision's body. We had what's his name, Colonel Haywood. He showed us that she was a terrorist. She came in storming through Sword headquarters, took the body, and left. Whereas this version there's a lot to unpack in this version. I don't want to spend too much time, but the key things that for me that stood out was the different version of the events. First, second, the way it seems like Haywood was a little bit more calculating than I gave him to be in earlier episodes. It seems like he was pushing buttons on Wanda, like the questions he was asking. He was kind of goading her to do exactly what she did, in my mind. And listen, if you go back and listen to him when he's talking to her about, well, what would you want to do? We can't just leave this $3 billion machine here. Mind you, she just wanted a body and have a funeral and say her goodbyes. Meanwhile, to him, it seemed like that she was taking this body and wasting it. But I was looking at the second layer of the conversation where it seemed like to me he wanted her to do what he was doing. It seemed like he was just kind of setting her up in my mind. Let's start with Rena. What were your thoughts at this moment, seeing Wanda going into Sword headquarters in a different fashion than what we saw before, and her getting to the point seeing Vision's body and the next steps? What do you think?
Yeah, I also agree with you. I did think that Haywood was trying to coerce her or get her to do this because obviously they know that she's a very powerful person. So they probably realized that, hey, our methods are just not working. We're not able to bring him back or do anything with the AI that we've used. So maybe she can, just because of how they were connected by the same stone and just how powerful she was. And we see that, like, we see him trying to get to her at, like, he invited her in, like, when she got to the front desk, they made it look like she stormed in.
Yeah.
But she was like, no, I got it. And she just goes in. And then her finally seeing his body, she kind of just broke down. And it made it seem, but earlier it made it seem like she stole the body, which we see that just didn't happen.
Not that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
By
So
you, Mike.
The big thing for me, I'm with Rena on everything she just said, but the big thing for me was the part when she was like, "I can't feel you." Like that again showed the connection they had, right?
Yeah.
And, like, who else would be able to detect vision like that except her connected with them through the mind stone, right?
Forgot about that one, because then that's also a small little throwback to the end of Infinity War when he was like, "All I can feel is you," right before he dies.
Yeah.
At this moment, we realized that Wanda did not take the body. Wanda left, heartbroken, and she gets in her car and she sees the letter in the passenger seat. And from my, again, I've only seen the episode once. The way I took it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rena, is that this was Vision's last will and testament, or what do you call that? Like what he decided to leave Wanda, which was the house, right? In Westview, New Jersey, of all places. No offense to New Jersey. So she drives to Westview and sees the home completely destroyed down to the foundations, right? And us as the audience are watching this like, wow, how worse can this get for her? We've seen her lose her family. We've seen her get manipulated, violated to a certain extent. We've seen her lose her brother. We've seen her lose her loved one.
What's crazy to me is that I saw this earlier, but like at the end of Endgame, you see everyone with their families. Like Ant-Man's with his daughter and his girlfriend. I mean, yeah, and then like Black Panther's with his, like, he's back in Wakanda. Like everyone is back with someone, and you don't realize that Wanda went home to nothing and no home. And
wow, that's a great point. Like I knew that she didn't have anyone to return because there's a little cute moment with her and Hawkeye, but it doesn't really register. To them, it's more like a send off to more so Natalie, Black Widow, in my opinion.
She wasn't really friends with the other Avengers.
Yeah. But you raise a good point. So she left. Everyone else is celebrating like Ewoks and Endor, and she goes home to nothing and no home. So at that moment, she unleashes to me probably one of the best scenes in this series so far. Is her full chaos magic potential. Boom, unleashed, and creates the house, and you can see the machinations behind creating the house. And then she goes another step further, and then creates like the entire Westview, and you see the hex field traverse through the town and change things and change people. So now you're seeing the origin of the show so far, how she got into the sitcom level, and she creates all this, and then she takes it a step further and creates Vision. Right, that's the one thing that she needs to complete is Vision, and she does this in a very dynamic motion here, which I thought was well done. And she steps in. Now she's in character. She was in color. The show's in black and white. Now she's in character. She's also in black and white. And they have this cute conversation. He goes, "Welcome home." Like, Tarina, your point is after everybody celebrated the return, she had nothing. And she finally has a home. although she created it, she has a home. So this moment to me, I thought kind of it filled up everything from episode 1 through this episode, and we'll get to the ending in a second. Uh, I don't have much to say other than the fact that I think the writers did a great job of getting me to this moment where I cared. Like honestly, I didn't care. I like Wanda's character. I like her potential. I didn't really care about her and her Vision story in any of the previous movies.
Right.
But after getting up to this moment, I was like, I see it now. Not bad. I need to go back and watch some of these moments. Yeah. What about you? Start with you, Rena.
Yeah, I really think that this scene was really amazing. Just like they showed so much power, the fact that she was able to create this life out of nothing. And it makes it even better because we know for a fact that she didn't take his body. So it would have, for us, it would have been like, oh, she just, reanimated it, added a little color on there, it's back to normal. But no, she fully created him. Like everything was just created again. Also, side note, we didn't mention this before, but I really loved how when she was driving through Westview, New Jersey, you saw the people and you're like, hey, you're the mailman. Hey, like you're the housewife. Like you start to see that. And then as soon as she changes it, you see everything just go back into the town that we have known for these episodes.
All right, so let's bring this to a close. So we go through this moment. Agatha finally understands, at least from our understanding, of how this whole thing started and how we got to this point. So the next thing that we have is Wanda looking for her children. The reason why she came down to this basement to look for her children. And she goes out, she hears them crying, she hears them calling from a distance, and she runs out and she sees now Agatha fully revealing herself, the witch and a witch archetype, and she's pulling what looks like to be magical strands or ropes around the necks of both her twins. And Agatha, like us, is saying, I now know who you are. I thought you were a myth. Beings be able to create something out of nothing. To Serena's point about creating Vision out of nothing. You're using chaos magic. You are the Scarlet Witch, which is like dun, 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 like we finally get her to be called the Scarlet Witch. It's been many moons. To me, I thought that was a great bookend to this episode. I didn't like the trope of her having to see her two kids being like, I don't know, I don't like where I think this might be going for the next episode, where she's got to make a decision which twin and whatnot. But I thought that was a great
predictions
bookend
for next week. So
yeah. So seeing this final moment, in a few seconds, what went through your mind, Mike?
Yeah, so my first thought is, what is going to happen with these kids, right? Because they're not real, like, in the outside world. So, and then my other thought was, oh, I cannot wait for this final showdown between Wanda and Agatha, right?
Is that where you think that the show's going?
I think
somewhere in there, Monica is in here somewhere.
Right. So here's my predictions for next week. We're going to have a couple showdowns. We're going to have Wanda and Agatha. We're going to have Pietro and Monica. And we're going to have Ultron versus Ultron.
Ultron versus Ultron.
Which
post-credit scene. Yeah.
Our post-credit scene.
Yeah.
What about you, Rena?
Yeah, I honestly agree with you, Mike, on the showdowns. I'm not sure which ones exactly will happen, but obviously we need to see Agatha and Wanda face off and see how their powers clash against each other, because obviously Agatha is wanting more power than she has right now, and obviously Wanda is more powerful than she is at this moment. So we can see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I agree with both of you, the showdowns. But there's something else that I took. So we kind of skipped the post-credit scenes with anti-Vision, or bizarre Vision. And I did some research. Obviously, this version of Vision does exist in the comics.
Okay.
Our fans, take a look at it. I'm not going to get to the backstory here because I don't think it's going to tie into what the MCU is going to do. Right. But here's my last takeaway before we end this: is I think the first impression I got watching that post-credit scene of them creating Vision, giving him life, is this is how they introduce the Sentinels, or the mutants,
Yeah.
in this MCU version.
So let's calculate. A 6 foot tall Vision costs about $3 billion in vibranium.
That's vibranium. They can downgrade, man. Mass production. You're not gonna get the alpha version.
Well, here's the thing. Now that we have mutants, we can start using adamantium.
I didn't think that far. You're right.
And I think market value is like 50% worth of vibranium.
Vibranium, 1.5 billion. Man, stimulus check. Release that stimulus check. What about you, Rena? Last thoughts on where we're going with this?
Last thoughts on. Honestly, I'm very excited to see how this goes. There's just so many ways they can go, especially with the twins. Like seeing what's going to happen with their powers, seeing if they can move on past this, seeing if Wanda or if Monica can make Wanda be seen as not the villain almost, because it's a 50-50. She is and she isn't, but in this case, Agatha is the greater villain. So I just want to see how that turns out. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to next week for sure. So.
All right, I think that's it, folks. This was a great episode. Again, it seems like since episode 4, it's just been getting better and better each episode.
Yeah.
So the finale's got to be something great. We're still waiting for that cameo, the Luke Skywalker version cameo.
Oh, right.
Haven't gotten that yet.
Any predictions on that?
Magneto, Professor X. I'm tired of predicting anything anymore. I'm just gonna.
It's up in the air. I don't. I have no idea. So
yeah, I think that's it. Mike, close us out.
All right. Don't forget to smash that like button, share our videos, subscribe to our podcast wherever you can get audio podcasts, and you can find us on social media at Hero Speak on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Oh, and TikTok. Don't forget TikTok.
Don't forget TikTok.
Right.